And we're back. So we pick up as Joe is his professor, and his alias, I meant to say, is Jonathan Moore. Now we have a very full bearded Joe, which we were not used to because he's very clean shaven throughout most of the show. But again, it's a good disguise. I don't know. The promos definitely, when the first episode rolls out, for me, my brain kind of went to like the police, like, don't stand so, don't stand so close to me. I love that song. I'm sure it's very problematic today, but come on, it was the 80s. Like, let songs live. So nonetheless, and he's very attractive in that deep baritone voice. He has made friends with the staff and the elite at this top university, and of all the people he has met with this very um, hoity-toity couple that lives just across the way from where he lives, and it becomes very, what was that Hitchcock movie, rear rear view window or something. Yes, rear window, 1954. But yes, it's giving very much that vibes, and he's very much enthralled, you know, in the lives of his neighbor Malcolm, played by Stephen Hagen. He's a literature professor at the university, and so he, runs with the riches of the elitist of the elites clique. And we are introduced to his girlfriend, Kate, Charlotte Ritchie, played by Charlotte Ritchie, which, by the way, doesn't she kind of give you? Maybe this is why it was kind of a little bit of a downer watching it. No shade to her. I think unfortunately, she just kind of has that face. She's a very attractive girl. Please don't misinterpret what I'm saying. But she gave me very, like, what's her name? Gillian chick? What's her name? Ghislaine Maxwell. Sorry, but she did, like, very of that elite top tier, and they think that they can get away with everything. I don't know if that was the inspiration for the character, but it was very that. She comes off as an ice queen, doesn't want to be involved with what she thinks is a popper, and Joe, not interested in his BS. Um, we also are introduced to Nadia Farron, one of his top students in his class. Lady Phoebe, played by Tilly Keeper. She's like our Paris Hilton of this little clique. Adam, played by Lucas Gage, and if he looks familiar, he was in The White Lotus, the first season, and I can link that somewhere around here. Really fabulous actor, and I think he's really up and coming. Beautiful eyes. Who, I think is in one of these, like, contemporary relationships where, he's playing a very, I think, what is it, pansexual character, which anything goes. So although he's very much in love with Phoebe, we later kind of stumble upon there might be ulterior motives, in the sense that Phoebe is very wealthy, and though he is too, because of poor investments, his money is now faltering into the toilet. And so he needs to stay afloat. People, once they're rich and love the lifestyle and find themselves all of a sudden poor, it's like the wheels start falling off in this downward spiral. So, and we're introduced to Reese. He looks familiar. I feel like I've seen him in something else, and very, just like that typical, very British appearance, very sexy, played by Ed Spilliers. Again, you already know. But yes, he is literally a rags to riches story. He went to Oxford with the rest of the crew. That's why they all know each other. But he's like the more brainier one for sure. And now fielding requests to run for mayor of London. He seems like the only decent one in this lot, but everyone has skeletons in their closets somewhere. So he, for some reason, kind of hits it off with Joe, especially at like a birthday event where Joe meets Phoebe, Lady Phoebe, right? Is her name? And but he passes out. But he did click with Reese before he kind of, totally conks out. And then we start our first episode in the fact that Joe goes back to his apartment and finds Malcolm stabbed. It's like, oh, what happened here? Who he doesn't recall. He's like, it could have been me. And then he starts getting these funny texts and messages letting him know that it was somebody else who was the culprit and was going to frame him if he didn't help him succeed at offing some of these heinous, rich, filthy, rich people. Oh, and we can't forget Gemma, played by Eve Austin, who's really repugnant, but she does a brilliant job doing it. Like Karen to the degree. And Simon So, played by Aiden Shang, who's one of these artsy fartsy people who just lives based on that. We have a couple of other people as well, but they have minor roles. Sophie So, played by Nissy Lin. I think she plays So's brother. Well-to-do people. Blessing, played by Ozamia Wainu. She's of royalty, I think. Yes, Blessing is a cryptocurrency investor. Oh, she's a cryptocurrency and literal Nigerian princess with several postgraduate degrees. But again, she's not so, not relevant, but just basically not part of that plot line. And Rollo, played by Ben Wiggins, is a stylish, well-mannered son of an aristocrat family where names are on many important buildings around Europe. Despite his glamour, there are rumors about his hidden dark side, and he isn't a fan of newcomer Jonathan. So we have, again, a poo-poo platter of people here. Again, I'm not saying that it wasn't as interesting as the last season, but yeah, it was just a handful of people who were very... I think because we are in this current economic slump, that to be seeing people so wealthy, rich, and not even care or bat an eye at anybody who is not in the same top tier as them is just kind of a little off-putting. And then when we discover that our ice queen here, I always forget the name, sorry, Kate, his father is this maniacal tycoon. Of all people, it's played by Craig Kinnear. And I love Craig since, come on, I was a fan since The Soup. If you're not familiar with The Soup, please Google it here or see it on YouTube. But it's hard for me to see comedians play villains. They can do it. For heaven's sake, we've had greats playing villains, but it's hard because he's very cutesy and his face looks like a puppy, and so to kind of see him play this maniacal evil genius that has been on top of his daughter's whereabouts and has kind of puppeteered her life throughout most of her life, it's just kind of hard for me to kind of swallow. But he's, again, I love him. You've Got Mail, all those great movies. He's made quite a career, but to see him as a villain, and that he knew of Joe, like he had made a thorough background on Joe, so that whole Jonathan thing. Basically, again, there's not much I can add to this season. I just kind of wanted to do the whole getup, but we see that they wanted to paint Joe in a more darker light, as opposed to all the glamorization that they've done. Penn has even made comments on how Netflix has kind of glamorized serial killers, so they wanted to show him really spinning in his wheels and the screws kind of coming loose, because we find out that yes, he did end up meeting up with Marianne and kept her captive. He went back to his habit. We're all creatures of habit, and he put her back in some glass box in some abandoned subway, I think, and kept her there to the point of almost starvation. And his top student found her by chance, was gonna try, and they hatched a plan for her getaway, but unfortunately nobody was even aware that I don't know what he developed this season. I feel like he either had it it was dormant, and then this season kind of came alive, a split personality, because we later discovered that the whole Reese relationship, he developed a relationship with Kate, believe it or not, post her boyfriend dying, but he also developed a very bromance with Reese. So then, for us to find out, spoiler alert, see in the second